In this video, we are going to continue with our Django project, and more specifically, we're going to start building our custom user model. Now, before we start, I want to give you a little bit of information about how I've been building the course and how I'm going to be building it out moving forward now. I realized in the last video that writing out this HTML is just going to take way too long, and basically I hate doing it, so I don't want to do it anymore. The last video was basically torture for me to sit there and film and write all that tedious HTML out. Also, the editing was basically torture. I would definitely compare that to torture. And many of you probably don't care about that HTML anyway. You're probably perfectly fine with me just copy pasting in the HTML and maybe quickly running through it and talking about it. This was originally supposed to be like a beginner course that would build up to like a much more advanced JavaScript, HTML, WebSockets, all that kind of stuff. But now, I just really don't want to write this HTML. There's just so much and it's so boring. It's very much like torture. I'm going to say it again. So anyway, moving forward, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be writing out the JavaScript all on video, or that's the plan anyway, because the JavaScript can be quite complicated when we start working with WebSockets. But from here on out, I think I'm going to just copy paste in HTML, copy paste in CSS. If you don't like it, too bad. Go and learn a little bit about HTML and CSS. That's not what I'm going to be teaching in this course. Let's get into the video. So the way Django works regarding user models is it comes with like a user model out of the box with some really basic properties. You got like your email, username, password, obviously. Are they an admin? Are they staff? A bunch of kind of built-in properties. What we want to do is we want to extend that user model and customize it to add some extra properties. And also, instead of using the username to log in, which is the Django default, we want to use the email to log in. So let's get started customizing that user model. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do is I'm going to stop my development server. Notice that I'm still running in my virtual environment. I'm going to write python manage.py start app, and this app is going to be called account, and I'm going to press enter. And of course, now this is going to generate a new folder in here. So now that we have a new app, the first thing we always need to do when we create a new app is go into settings.py. And yes, I've adjusted the font, so this should hopefully look a little bit better for you guys, much easier to see. Go into the installed apps. I'm going to copy this line and add account here. Now pressing Control S on that, and I'm going to go into models.py, and we are going to build our custom account model. So this is generally the account model that I use for almost all of my projects. I like to use, I always like to use the email to log in as opposed to the username, and then I have some other basic properties that I add. So first we actually need an import. We need to import the abstract base user. So from django.contrib.auth.models, import the abstract base user. And you could search this on GitHub if you wanted to go look at the Django source code and take a look at the abstract base user class. You could do that, but I'm just going to kind of use it here, and you can follow along, or you can go and explore it more yourself. It's up to you. The base user manager is something that we're going to use to build a custom manager, which you're going to see in just a second also. So inside of account here, I want to reference our abstract base user, which is essentially going to extend the base user class for Django. Now I want to define some fields. The first field is going to be an email field, and you're probably wondering why I did this kind of all these tabs here. So I actually did one space and then a whole bunch of tabs. I do this because the models, when we define the fields, they line up better and the code just looks cleaner. So you can do this or you can do this. It really doesn't matter. This is just something that I do to keep things looking a little nicer. So now I'm going to do models.email field. So email field. And this has a couple parameters. The verbose name is going to equal email. This just gives more information inside of the admin to kind of identify what this field is going to do. I want to set a max length equal to 60 characters. I don't want any emails longer than 60 characters. And then this is very important. We want to set unique equal to true. That means that nobody can share the same email. That is very, very important. Now we want to do the username field. So equals models dot, this is just going to be a character field. Again, we'll have max length. We want to have maybe a username with a max length of 30 characters. And again, very important, unique equals to true on that one also. Now I want date joined. So this will be like the date that they very first joined our website. This is going to be a date time field. The verbose name on this one is going to be date space joined. And I want to do auto now auto now true and set that equal to true. So auto now true will basically set the date, set that flag as soon as the object is created. So as soon as an account object is created, this will get set. So that's how we know when they join, because that's going to be when their account model actually gets built. Now I'm going to copy this line one more time, and instead of date joined, I'm going to do last login and do a tab to line this up and change this text just to say last login. And this one's not going to be auto now true. This is just going to be auto now. So every time they log in, this date will get set. Basically, what will happen is every time this account object is altered or accessed, this date will get overridden. That's what auto now means. Now we're going to have a couple Boolean fields. The first one is going to be is admin. So models.boolean field, and the default value on this is of course going to be false. We don't want a bunch of people having admin access that are not admin. Then the next one is going to be is active. And the last one is going to be is staff. Actually, there is going to be one more. We need 4. We need admin, active, staff, and is superuser. Those are the 4 Boolean fields that we need. One of these, however, does have a default value of true. Now you're probably wondering why I included all of these. Are these all really necessary? Well, they're actually included into the abstract base user class. So we need to override these in order to use this model, to extend our user model. These are basically like required fields, so we have to add them. Now, is admin is an obvious one. That's useful. Is superuser, that's probably a useful one. But is staff and is active, those aren't necessarily useful. We just have to include those. So that's why they're here. Now I'm going to create a profile image field. So profile image equals models.image field. And we're going to need a third-party package in order to create this image field, which we're going to add in just a minute here. Now max length equals 255 characters. And I want to set an upload to field, which I'm not going to set yet, just going to leave that blank. I want to do null equal to true, blank equal to true. So meaning that this profile image can be null and it can be blank. It doesn't have to actually have something. And now I want to set a default, which I will also leave blank for now. So there's a couple of things we got to do. Number one is we got to get the package that supports an image field. Number two is we need to set a pathway that the images are going to be uploaded to or stored at. And then we need to set a default. So what's going to be the default image, right when the user creates their account. Obviously, they're not going to have a custom profile image yet. So we need to set a default pathway. So first things first, what about this image field? Well, this image field is actually part of a package known as Pillow. So I'm going to do pip install Pillow. And that should allow us to use an image field. Looks like the requirement is already satisfied for me, since obviously I've already built this project, but that shouldn't be the case for you. And of course, since we've installed a new package, I want to do pip freeze requirements.txt just to keep track of all the requirements for the project. Always important to do that. So now we have an image field. Now what about the upload to and the default file paths? So I'm going to write these actually above our account class. I'm going to create two kind of functions that are responsible for outputting those pathways. Find get profile image file path, and this will take self and file name, and I'm going to return profile underscore images slash, and I want to do plus. Actually, we can use, since we're using Python 3, we can use this new string. I can't remember the word. I'm having a brain failure. It's called string interpolation or something like that. I can't remember. But anyway, what you do is you just put an F at the front, and then basically like with Kotlin or any of the modern programming languages, you can do squiggly braces and then put whatever you want inside of here. So in this case, I want to do self.primary key because we're going to be referencing the account model. So the folder structure is going to be profile images, the user's unique primary key, and then I want to do the name of that image, which is, they're all going to have the same name. It's going to be profile underscore image .png, and we need to surround this in quotations because this is a string. This is just a raw string. This will also be a string. This we might need to do string self dot primary key. I'm not 100% sure about that. I'm going to leave it as self dot primary key just to see what happens. But yeah, we'll see if that's okay. So these profile images are going to be saved in media CDN, and then it's going to be a folder named profile images, which will be generated, and then it'll be separated by the primary key of the user, and then the name of that image will be profile underscore image.png. Now, what about the default pathway? So let's create that. So get default profile image, and that doesn't take anything, and we're going to return the pathway to the default profile image. So in this case, it's going to be the coding with Mitch, just the coding with Mitch folder, and then logo. You can do the 1080 one if you want. That's the one that I'm going to use. So 1080.png. So it's going to look into our static CDN. It's going to see the coding with Mitch folder, and it's going to grab the logo right here, this image right here. That's what this is pointing to. So upload to, I can just get the get profile file path, get that one in there, and then go over to the right, and we want to get the default profile image path right here. So the upload to is the profile image file path, and then the default is that default profile image. Now the last field that we're going to add here is hide email. So hide underscore email. If you recall from the demos for this project, there's an option inside of the account properties of each user to hide their email from other users. So it's just going to be a Boolean field, and the default here will be true. So by default, all users will be hiding their email from other users. Now we need to add a couple more parameters here. The first one, or actually the next two, are very, very important if you want to log in with the email as opposed to the username. Django by default will log in with the username, like if you just have a username. But if you want to use email, you have to set this parameter, username field set to email. So this matches this. If this was something else, if I had this as like user email, I would have to have this as user email. But this is email, so I have it matching as email. Now we need to set the required fields. So required fields, and set that equal to username. So the new username field, quotation marks, is the email field, but another required field is the username. So both of these are required to create an account. Now the next thing that's required when you build a custom Django model is like a toString method or a string method. So this will return, this is like when you access the object, what is going to be returned if you don't access any of the individual fields. It's like a default return value if you don't access an individual field. I like to return the username here because some people like to hide their email. So their username is kind of like the public thing that you can be safe with sharing. So I like to return the username. Now I'm going to add a couple more things that are required for this account model since we're using the abstract base user. So if you recall from up here when I was talking about the is admin, is active, is staff, is superuser, now we want to set kind of some default permissions that are with the abstract base user class. The first permission is has perm. So that's an override function. That's a function that I'm going to be overriding. So I want to take self, the permission, object equals none. So by default, the object equals none, and then just do return self.isAdmin. So it's kind of just a default function saying, does the user have permission to do some like admin-ish thing? If they are an admin, then yes. It's just kind of a simple rule, nothing fancy, nothing complicated. Second one is going to be has module permissions. This is another one that has to be overridden. So has module perms, self, and then app label. And to keep this simple, I'm just going to say return true. Doesn't really matter in this case. You know, we can just say everybody, sure. So this is the basic structure of when you want to build a custom user model. You extend the abstract base user class. You include whatever field you want to log in with. In this case, it's the email. Set it to unique is true. Set the new username field for the thing that you want to log in with. Set any other required fields. You have to override these functions and make sure to override these parameters here, these 4 Booleans. And that should be it. The other fields you can just kind of add. You can add infinite number of other fields to like a custom user. Now I'm going to build one more function that's going to add a little bit of convenience later on. Right now it's not going to make any sense. We're not going to use this till later in the course, but I just want to build it now. So get profile image file name. What this is going to do is later when we actually save a profile image, remember we want to save every profile image with the name profile_image.png. So if a user uploads a profile image that has, you know, some other name, say it's just like some random string, we want to be able to extract that and then replace it with profile image. So that's what this is going to help us do. I want to get the file name so that later it's going to be easier to extract it and replace it with kind of that generic. So I'm going to do return string self.profile image. And then inside of here, I want to select like an index. So string self.profile image. This is how you select an index with Python. You do square braces on the string itself. And I want to select on an index. So dot index. So I'm looking for a specific index, profile image slash, or profile images slash. So what I'm looking for is, I'm looking for this string right here inside of the pathway. And then I could use string interpolation here also, add the squiggly braces, do self.primary key, and then another slash. Oh, and then we got to finish with a colon. So this is how you select like a substring using Python. You use square braces, and then you use an index, and then if you wanted to select like a substring with between two indexes, like I'll just take this out. It would be like index 1 would be here, and then index 2 would be here. That is how, whoops, it would be like, sorry, it would be like index 1 is here and index 2 is here. But we want to just select an index and then everything until the end. So that is what I'm doing here. I'm finding an index and then saying take everything towards the end. Okay, so there's our custom user model. Now I'm going to build a custom user model manager. Now model managers in Django and Python can be used to build kind of queries that commonly get used, or override functions that commonly get used. Two functions that commonly get used for us are going to be creating a user. So like one would be create a new user, and then the second one would be like create a super user. So that would be like me creating a super user. So those are the two functions that we want to override for the kind of account creation process. So I'm going to create a custom account manager. So my account manager is what I'll call it, and it's going to use base user manager. So that's this class that we imported up here. Now I want to override the functions. So the two functions that I'm interested in are create user. So self. Now the parameters that we're interested in are email, username, and password, and the default will be none. And then I would want to do if not email. So just kind of a little bit of error handling here. I want to raise an error, raise a value error, and I can just say, users must have an email address, because that's a required field. So if there's no email, that's what I want to say. Now I'm going to copy this and do the same thing for the username, because remember, the username is the other required field. Users must have username. There we go. And I'll add a period there and a period there. And if those two conditions are met, then I can create that user. So user equals self.model, and I can set the email equal to self.normalize email. Normalize email. So that's going to make it lowercase. We don't want any kind of case sensitivity when it comes to creating an account or something, that a login parameter that you're going to use. Because if somebody accidentally uses like a capital letter when they sign up, we don't want that to be an issue when they go to log in. So using normalized email is very important. And also later we're going to build a custom model backend to make sure that when they log in, everything gets casted to lowercase, so that if they do accidentally enter a capital, it's going to get casted to lowercase and there's not going to be an issue. All right, so email and then username equals the username that is passed at the top. We don't need to normalize that. That doesn't matter, since they're not going to be logging in with the username, so it's not important to normalize it. Now go to the next part. I want to set the password. So user.setPassword, and set that equal to the password. And then user.save, and do using equals self._db, and then return that user. So basically just overrided the create user function so that it'll show like some custom errors that I've defined, making sure to normalize the email, setting the password, and then saving it. Now the next one, as I said, is creating a super user. So define create super user, and I want to do self, email, username, and password. And I want to do user equals self.create user. So I'm using that create user function that I literally just overrided right up here. And the parameters for this one is going to be email. Actually, it's going to be kind of the same. So let me just copy these. We have email. We want to normalize the email. We have the username, and we have the password equals password. I could have actually also included the password up here. That would have been fine, but I called set password. So two kind of just different ways to do the same thing. Now I want to do user.isAdmin and set that equal to true, because remember, we're creating a super user. And I'm going to copy this 2 more times and do isStaff, set that to true, because if you're an admin, if you're a super user, you're basically everything. So I want to set all of these Booleans to true. So super user, set that equal to true also. And then do the same thing with this. I want to save it and then return that user. Now, last but not least, we need to set this custom user manager to our our model. So I can do objects and set it equal to my account manager. So that's how you kind of tie the account to the custom manager that was built up here. Okay, so let's save this. I'm pressing Control S, and I'm going to open up a command prompt, and we are going to do Python manage.py make migrations. So this builds kind of the database transactions that are going to need to be committed to make all these changes, because this is going to be a table that gets built in our database. So by doing make migrations, it should, looks like we actually got an error, auto now true. Let's go take a look at that. Oh, this needs to be auto now add, my bad. So auto now add equals true. Let's go back to the command prompt and try that again. So Python manage.py make migrations. Looks like, oh, I didn't save it. Pressing Control S. Now trying that again. There we go. So it created the model, it created the migrations. If we look into our account section here, it has generated our migrations file. This is defining what needs to be to our database in Django language. So now let's go back to the command prompt and do one more command, Python manage.py migrate. So this is actually going to apply the migrations to our database. So like if I was to open Postgres right now I would see that this new account table has been generated. Since we're going to need to do that later anyway, why don't I just do that and show you right now. So PSQL Postgres, or you could log in with the user Django to the specific database. So coding with Mitch chat dev and log in with Django, either one, or you could just use the Postgres user, which has all the permission. Oh, I typed the wrong password. The password is actually password. There we go. Now I'm already connected to the database. So now I want to list the database tables. So \DT, and boom, there we go. There's our account table that has been generated. Now, because we have created this new custom user model, and before I created this model, like earlier in the course when we were setting things up, I created a super user. So if I was to run the server, I'll show you. So Python manage.py run server. And if I was to go to the admin, let me just go to the admin. Now, remember, I already have a user. So if I go to users here, I have this kind of default user that was created before we built our user model. But since we now have a different custom user model, I want to delete like basically all the users that we have, because we've changed the way that this is being built. A super user is being built differently. Basic users are being built differently. So it's a good idea to just clear out the database and then recreate that super user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press \Q to quit, and I'm going to log in with the Postgres user, which is kind of like the top, the user with the highest privileges on our database. And that should be the same for you. So now I've logged in. Now I'm going to drop database. So I'm going to delete the database. So drop database coding with Mitch chat dev and do a semicolon. So that's going to delete it. All my data is now going to be cleared. Looks like it's giving me an error. That's because the server is running. It's telling me that another client is currently using it. So if I stop the server by pressing Control C and I run that again, that should now delete the database. Perfect. So now I want to create the database again. So I'm going to go create database, coding with Mitch chat dev. Now I want to give privileges to the user Django to use that database. So grant all I always forget how to spell this. Privileges. It's a weird privileges on database, coding with Mitch chat dev to the user named Django. So there we go. Coding with Mitch chat dev does not exist. Oh, because I named it incorrectly. So let me try that again. I'm going to delete the one that I named incorrectly here. My bad. Sorry about that. So let me delete that. And now I'm going to create the correct one. So create database, coding with Mitch chat dev. That's spelled correctly this time. And then the next command is grant the privileges. So as soon as this is created, boom, there we go. Now grant all privileges to that new database, to that user Django, and there we go. Now we're ready to go. So we've basically just reset everything. We now have a clean slate, but we have our new user model that we're gonna use. So now our database is completely clear, and we can create a new super user. But there's one thing we need to do. We need to go into settings.py first and set a parameter in here called auth user model and set it equal to account.account. So I'm referencing the This should be auth user model, the account app, and I'm saying look for the model named account. I'm going to press Control S on that. Now this is telling Django that the default model for authentication, is that model that we just created. So now if I open up a command prompt and I write Python manage.py, well, actually first we need to migrate. So Python manage.py migrate. You'll see some migrations here. I've actually already done it off camera, so what you'll see is a bunch of migrations being applied here. So just ignore that I have nothing. You should see a whole bunch of stuff. Now I want to do Python manage.py create Superuser. And so you notice it's asking me for my email first. Before it used to ask for the username. Now it's going to ask for the username. It's going to ask for my password again. And now I have my super user created, and it's been created through that function that we created in the model. So what it did was it used this function right here, create super user. So now that I have created that super user, I can go to the admin. I'm going to refresh this. Notice it's asking for my email right now. It's not asking for my username anymore. So I'm going to type mitch@tavian.ca, and there's my password, and it looks like I'm getting an error. Now, it did work. The authentication did work, but the problem here is actually with the admin. Because we've changed the default user model, we also need to change what the admin panel is going to look like. It doesn't know how to handle that new user model that we just built. So if I go to the home page, notice I am authenticated. So this view is saying that I am authenticated. It's just that the admin panel doesn't know what to do with me. It doesn't, or when you try to navigate to that user section, it doesn't exist. So we need to build that. So going back to Sublime Text and going into admin, the admin.py file inside of account, we're going to customize what the admin panel is going to look like considering our new user model. So up at the top here, I'm going to import a couple more things. I'm going to do from django.contrib.auth.admin import user admin, and then from account.models import the account. So that's the account model that we just built. Now I'm going to build a new model admin class. So class account admin, pass user admin. That's like the class that we're extending by. Now I'm going to set some properties. So list display is, I'll actually just write it out and then I'll talk about what each one does. It's just easier when it's done because then you can actually see it in action. So I'm going to do username, well, first email, username, date joined, and let's do last login is admin, and is staff. You can pretty much do whatever fields you want here, although I recommend definitely using email and username. Now I'm going to do search fields. Again, I'm going to explain these when we take a look at the admin panel, not right now. I want to just type them all out for now. Now read only fields and set that equal to ID. Let's do date joined. We don't want them to be able to change that. And also last login. So all these fields should never be able to be changed by the admin. Those are automatically changed or generated by the system. Filter, actually I don't need to add any filter options. That's fine. Now I want to register that new admin. So admin.site.register, pass the account model, and then pass the account admin. So that's the new admin. So now I'm going to save that, and we don't need to restart our server or anything like that. We can just go right to the admin, refresh this, and this should show a view that's been updated. Looks like we got an error. Let me just check the console here. Okay, so it's saying that I need to have some filtering options. Well, I actually don't want filtering options, so what I need to do here is actually just set them to nothing. So I'm going to say filter horizontal equal to nothing. List filter, set that equal to nothing, and also field sets and set that equal to nothing. So saving that, let's go back to the admin, refresh this, and there we go. So now we have a new section in our admin called accounts. And if I click on this, it's going to reflect how we built that admin class. So notice these fields here. Let's go back to Sublime Text and I'll explain these. So list displays email, username, date joined, last login, is admin, and is staff. Those are the fields at the top here. Email, username, date joined, last login, is admin, is staff. Those are how you define what fields get shown up at the top. The next one was search fields. So search fields is going to be this right here. So if I was to search either their email or their username, so if I search Mitch or the email, those are the fields that can be used in that search view. The last is read-only field, so ID, date joined, and last login. Those can be seen if I click on the model and I look in here. Notice ID, date joined, and last login. Those are all read-only. Those can't be changed by me. Everything else here can be changed, other than the password, of course. I can't change that. Also, I can't see that. So email can be changed, username, all these Booleans, the profile image, all that kind of stuff. Also, another thing to check here is, did our profile image correctly get set? So is this profile image working? Well, if I click on this, it says note 404, and I actually do know why. Let's open up our project. So if we go into, notice what it's trying to find. It's trying to find media, coding with Mitch logo, and trying to find that. It's saying this pathway does not exist right here. So media CDN, coding with Mitch logo does not exist. Okay, so go into static CDN, go into the coding with Mitch folder, and grab this logo 1080 picture. So press Control C on that. Now go to media CDN, coding with Mitch, and paste it in here. Now if I refresh this, it should find that image. So there we go. There's our default image. So we know that it is actually working. This guy has a default image set to his profile. All right, so we have our admin set up. We have our first super user. The next thing is logging in with the wrong case. So if I was to like go and log in and do Mitch at capital T, Tabian.ca, this should not work, and it shouldn't work because of that capital. So if I press login, yep, both fields baby case sensitive. So this is not really a good thing. Like if somebody accidentally presses a capital, that should not be a problem, especially because inside of our code, inside of the models, we're normalizing the email when we create a user. So it's always going to be lowercase. So what we can do is actually add a case insensitive backend to the user model so that when they log in, it's going to be case insensitive. So what I'm going to do is go into account. I'm actually going to minimize some of this stuff just to make it look a little better. Go into account, right click, create a new file called backends.py. And inside here, I'm going to create that case insensitive model backend that we can set to our user model. So from Django.contrib.auth import the get user model. So this is how I'm getting my user model for this file. We could have also imported settings and just got it that way, but either way works the same. Django.contrib.auth.backends, and I want to import model backend. Now I'm going to create a class called Case-insensitive model backend and reference that model backend class. Now I want to create one function called authenticate. So I'm overriding the authenticate function. So I'm saying when users authenticate, do this instead. So request username equals none, or the default equals none, password equals none, or the default equals none, then keyword arguments. So my user model is going to equal get user model. So that's going to get my default user model that's set in the settings.py file. So it's going to get this user model right here. So I'm getting the user model. I'm saying if the username is none, then I want to do username equals keyword arguments dot get user model dot username field. So I'm getting the username field from the user model, which would mean this field right here, username field. Now I want to do try and accept, and the accept is going to be user model dot does not exist. So if I can't find it, then what do I want to do? I want to do user model, initialize it, set a password. So basically create a new one and set it equal to the password. Otherwise, I want to do case insensitive username field. So this is actually going to be the email in this case. I want to do squiggly braces, __ I exact. And I didn't come up with this, by the way. I found this either in a Stack Overflow post or on the Django documentation. I cannot remember. User model dot username field. And then I want to do user. So I'm getting the user model. So this is if they actually do exist, dot default manager dot get ** squiggly brace case insensitive username field, and then colon, and then username. So again, I did not come up with this. I don't really know exactly how this is working. This is some kind of Python magic, but basically what it's doing is it's getting the field, the case insensitive username field. In this case, that's going to be the email. Then it's getting the user based on that email by using the case insensitive version. So it's getting rid of the capitals or getting the case insensitive version. Now, otherwise, so that's the accept case. Otherwise, so we're going to have an else case for our if block up here. I can kind of clean that up. Otherwise, I want to do if user.check password, check if the password is correct, and self.user can authenticate and pass the user. Then we want to return the user. So this is the login. You can just copy this for any one of your projects. It's going to work exactly the same as long as you're using, actually, yeah, it doesn't matter. Even if you're using a different username field, whether you're using the email or something else, maybe a number, it doesn't really matter. This is going to work the exact same way. It's going to make sure that they're logging in, and it doesn't matter if it's a capital or it's a lowercase. So now how do we use this monstrosity that we just created? Well, I'm going to save this and go into settings, and just below the auth user model that I set here, I'm going to set a couple authentication backends. So authentication backend. So these are kind of like things that we want to happen in the event of an authenticated or a user trying to authenticate. I'm going to use django.contrib.auth.backends.allow all users model backend. And then the second one is going to be that case-insensitive backend that we just built. So I'm referencing the account app that we just built, account.backends.case-insensitive model backend. And I should actually make sure I spelt that right. So I'm pressing Control-C on that. I'm going to go to backends and just pasting this in just to make sure that I spelt that correctly. And that should be good. So let's go to settings, make sure I save that. Now let's go to try and log into the admin again. So if I refresh this, I'll actually just go back to admin. Now I'm going to do @tabian.ca with a capital T, just like I did before. Press login, and boom, I can log in even though it's a capital now. So if I'm logged in, notice the profile image is showing up in the corner here. We want that same kind of thing for our development environment. So if I go to the home page and look at the header, that is not showing. So let's go back to our project, and we just need to do one simple change. Go into header.html. I'm just going to search for img. So I'm searching for any of the image tags inside here. And instead of showing that default image, I want to set the user's profile image. So I can do 2 squiggly braces. I can do request.user.profile image and then .url. So I'm accessing the user object, the authenticated user object, accessing the profile image field, and then saying get the URL for that. So I'm going to copy this and look for the other image tag in this template, and then just paste in the same thing. Now press Control S, go back to our development environment, refresh this, and boom, there is that default profile image. So we covered a lot of things here, but I wanted to make sure I covered kind of everything to do with the custom user model kind of all in one video. So we built a custom user model. We cleared the database to make the migrations and make sure that it uses only that custom user model that we created. We told Django that, hey, we're going to be logging in with the email field, not the username field, which is my preferred way to do things. We customized the admin console to show like the fields that we want to show, the ones that can be edited, can't be edited. Oh, we built the custom model backend so that no matter if they use a capital accidentally when they're trying to log in, that's not going to matter. They're still going to be able to log in. And then last but not least is we set the profile image in the header. Oh, and by the way, keep in mind that like the stuff that I did in this video, you could pretty much copy paste and use in any of your other Django projects. All of this stuff is pretty much going to be the same, other than you might have some, extra fields in your account model, or maybe less fields depending on the way that you want to set it up. But all the stuff here is very generic. You can pretty much use this in all your projects, which is a great thing. Now, if you're watching this video on YouTube, don't forget to go to codingwithmitch.com, because if you register on codingwithmitch.com to watch this, it's still free. It just tracks your progress and gives you extra links in the description or down below the videos for more information on the things I talk about in the video. Some of these videos are long, and I actually inside of the description for the course, or inside the description for the lecture, I actually put links to all of the code changes that I make in the video. So if you want to kind of go through it quickly, maybe you don't want to listen to me for I don't know what this video was, 30 minutes probably. If you don't want to listen to me for the full 30 minutes, you can just check the code down in the description of the video and see what needs to be changed. So I highly recommend going to codingwithmitch.com and watching it there. There's a lot of added benefits. In the next video, we're going to work on registration. So now we have the account model all set up. We're ready to register, to log in, to log out, all that kind of stuff. So next is registration.